Halloween Franchise Explained. The star of the Halloween franchise, the great Michael Myers, the knife-wielding, near-indestructible serial killer, has seen many ups and downs in his quest to find Lorie Strode or any other member of his family. What John Carpenter started in 1978 as a slasher film turned into a franchise of 11 films, while 2 more have been announced. In the course of 11 movies, Michael has been electrocuted, stabbed, tranquilized, burned, injected with acid, blown up by dynamite, but Michael always emerged alive, if not entirely victorious. The series has more than one continuity, which makes it a bit difficult to follow. So, Marvelous Videos decided to break down the films for you along with minute details and unknown facts to give you a comprehensive timeline and the sequence of events. So friends, put away your kitchen knives and throw away your masks because pure evil is on its way.
Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin.
Number 1. Halloween, 1978. After stabbing his elder sister to death with a kitchen knife in Haddonfield, Illinois, 6-year-old Michael Myers was sent to the Smith's Grove Sanitarium in 1963 for the next 15 years. In 1978, Michael Myers' psychiatrist, Dr. Samuel Loomis, reached Smith's Grove Sanitarium to take him to court for his hearing. Samuel hoped that Michael would never be allowed to step foot outside of the sanitarium, but Michael stole Samuel's car and escaped. On his way back to his hometown, Michael slew a mechanic. Once in Haddonfield, he stole an expressionless white mask from a hardware store. Sometime later, Michael Myers saw a young girl named Lorie Strode drop off a key at the Myers house that her father had been trying to sell. Although Lorie notices Michael has been stalking her throughout the day and everywhere she went, her friends Annie Brackett and Linda Vanderklok blatantly dismiss her claims and concerns. Meanwhile, Samuel comes to Haddonfield in search for Myers. To his surprise, he finds that the tombstone of Michael's sister Judith is missing. He then makes his way to the town sheriff and Annie's father, Leigh Brackett, whom he tells that Michael Myers is pure evil and that he must be found with immediate effect. While Brackett hesitantly begins his search for Michael, Samuel Loomis remains at the long-abandoned Myers house and waits for Michael to return. Later that night, Lorie and Annie babysit Tommy and Lindsay, respectively. Evidently, the night of horrors has begun for these teens.
Well, it won't hurt you to go out with them, for God's sake.
Michael follows the girls and first kills a dog. Although Tommy sees Michael from his window and tells Lorie about a boogeyman, Lorie dismisses his claims as a child's imagination. Annie later takes the child she was babysitting to the Doyle house because she wanted to pick her boyfriend Paul up and get a little frisky with him. However, contrary to what she expected to get wet, Michael wetted her throat with her own blood when he slit her throat from the back seat. Later, Linda and her boyfriend Bob came to the Wallace house only to find it abandoned. They take advantage of the situation in the most heated way possible, but Michael pinned Bob to the kitchen's wall with a knife and later went after Linda posing as Bob. Michael then strangled Linda with a telephone cord while she was on a call with Lorie, who thought it was a prank that her friend was pulling. Little did she know that Linda was choking and gasping for breath. Meanwhile, Loomis discovered his car and expedited his search. Lorie, however, grew concerned about her friend and went to the Wallace house, only to find the corpses of her friends and Judith Myers' headstone. But Michael attacked her and slashed her arm. In an attempt to escape him, she fell down the stairs and injured herself. Nevertheless, she managed to escape from the house and went to Tommy's. She asks the kids to hide and stabs Michael with a knitting needle when he follows her. Assuming that he was dead, she relaxed for a while, but she wasn't aware that Michael Myers was supposed to feature in a sequel. She then asked the kids to hide in the washroom while she hid in the bedroom closet. When Myers attempted to break in, Lorie stabbed his chest with his own knife. Pretty brave, Lorie. After this, Lorie asks the kids to run out of the house and get any help they could. It seemed sense finally prevailed for Lorie. Michael awoke once again from a presumed death and went after Lorie. However, Loomis noticed the kids and went into the house to investigate. Loomis shot Michael 6 times and knocked him off the second-floor balcony. However, Loomis later discovered that Michael's body was missing, but he wasn't shocked to see that, as if he knew it was coming. Interestingly enough, Lorie and Tommy were watching the 1951 film The Thing from Another World, and John Carpenter went on to direct the horror masterpiece The Thing, starring Kurt Russell in 1982. Number 2. Halloween 2, 1981. The film begins where the first one ends. Dr. Loomis shoots Michael Myers and Myers falls off the balcony, but he escaped into the darkness of the night. He had survived quite a few attacks in the past few hours and was now wandering through the dark alleys. He came across an elderly couple and stole a kitchen knife from them and killed a teenage girl whom he'd found in the vicinity. Meanwhile, Lorie had hustled a lot and managed to save herself from Michael's wrath and was being taken to Haddonfield Memorial Hospital for recovery. On the other hand, Loomis and Sheriff Leigh Brackett continued their search for Michael. But he's a difficult fish to catch. Later, a teenager named Ben Tramer was presumed to be Michael Myers, and he got hit by a cop car. Ben, on whom Lorie had a crush in the first film, burned to death in the accident. When Sheriff Brackett learns that his daughter Annie got killed in the murder spree, he excused himself from the investigation and left Deputy Gary Hunt to continue the investigation. Since the policeman believed that Michael Myers had been killed in the car crash, he got a chance to work in whatever way he wanted. Sometime later, he learned from a news broadcast about Lorie's location and reached the hospital. Smartly enough, he killed the phone lines and disabled the cars present in the vicinity, ensuring that the people inside are trapped. He then goes on to kill almost all the scarce staff that was present for the night shift. Meanwhile, Lorie wondered why Michael chose her as the prime victim, but couldn't come to a conclusion. This was a question that was largely left unanswered in the original film, which seemed to suggest that Michael chose Lorie because he saw her and Tommy's relationship as similar to his relationship with Judith. However, in this film, Lorie sees dreams in which she remembers visiting a young Michael at the sanitarium. It turns out that Michael's parents adopted Lorie after he killed his sister, and he went to the sanitarium, but she doesn't know that yet. Lorie somehow gets to know that Michael entered the hospital and was massacring the staff. Although hurt from her experiences earlier that night, she kept pillows on her bed to deceive Michael, who stabbed the pillows assuming they were her. Meanwhile, Loomis learns that Michael was related to the Sam Hain and the cult, which explained his powers and apparent indestructibility. Loomis was ordered to go to Smith's Grove by the governor, but upon realizing that Michael was after Lorie, he forced the marshal escorting him to drive him back to Haddonfield. Back at the hospital, paramedic Jimmy and nurse Jill Franco were looking for Lorie. Jimmy had knocked himself over by slipping in the pool of blood of another nurse that Michael had slaughtered. But Jill finally managed to find Lorie, only to be killed by Michael. After a failed attempt to escape with Jimmy, who was briefly conscious, Lorie found herself being chased by Michael. But Loomis, the marshal, and his colleague arrived at Haddonfield Hospital just in time. Michael murdered the marshal, but Loomis and Lorie managed to reach the temporary safety of the operating room. Loomis gave Lorie the marshal's gun, but Michael stabbed him. Lorie, on the other hand, blinded Michael by shooting both his eyes. It's rather strange how Lorie is an excellent shooter, and Michael could drive a car in the first film without having any practical knowledge of driving. Although blind, Michael staggered and waved his weapon to kill Lorie, but Loomis and Lorie filled the operating room with oxygen. Loomis helped Lorie escape and ignited the gas to immolate himself and Michael. Michael emerged from the room completely covered in flames, but collapsed later. Lorie managed to survive once more, although she was more traumatized than ever. Number 3. Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, 1982. Well, first things first, there's really not much to talk about Halloween 3, because it feels like the tried and tested cliched story of an evil and diabolic organization that seeks to wreak havoc on a town's children, and a fearless couple figures out what's really going on. Furthermore, apart from committing the ambitious task of writing the infamous Michael Myers out of the script, the film didn't really do anything innovative. While producer Deborah Hill claims that the film would steer clear of the grotesque gore, visceral bloodshed, etc., and head in a direction of science fiction while banking on paranoia, in reality, this was far from true. The film instead relied heavily on absurd kill sequences and deaths. Having said that, if we ignore the plot that is nothing more than an absolutely illogical shamble, the film succeeds in offering a bit of delightful and entertaining pleasures.
8 more days to Halloween, Halloween.
But for that, one must sincerely watch the film for the fun of it, and not worry about finding sense and sensibilities. It's a classic case of a film that's casually insane, yet entertaining. Also, the film looks good visually because Dean Cundey was the man behind the lens. He is known for films like Jurassic Park and Apollo 13. As far as the story is concerned, a man named Henry gets attacked by another man and is rushed to the hospital by a good Samaritan named Walter Jones. At the hospital, Harry is given under the care of Dr. Daniel Chalice. However, later that night, Harry gets murdered by another man who had entered Harry's hospital room. When Daniel tried to apprehend the murderer, he immolated himself. A few days later, Harry's daughter Ellie meets Daniel at a bar, and Daniel tells her about the strange sequence of events that had led to Harry's death. He also showed her a mask that Harry was holding when he was brought to the hospital. Ellie and Daniel trace the mask back to a company called Silver Shamrock Novelties. Daniel visits the town in which the company was based and learns that Harry visited there. At the motel in which he was staying, so did the other who had a business with Silver Shamrock.
Without the whole town watching it.
Good point.
Soon, mysterious men start butchering people in obnoxious ways. For instance, a lady named Marge gets killed by a stone microchip that zapped her face with a laser beam. However, Shamrock has a sinister plan of killing the townsfolk by giving them masks containing a piece of Stonehenge that's implanted in the microchip. The microchips were designed to kill the wearer with brain damage. Furthermore, from the bodies of the deceased would come out swarms of snakes and insects that would kill anyone in the vicinity. However, Daniel managed to destroy the entire facility, but later, Ellie attacks Daniel. Well, because she was a robotic clone. But our heroic doctor, who did everything unrelated to his profession, managed to kill the android clone. Number 4. Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers, 1988. Michael Myers remained in the state of comatose for 10 years after the events of the first film. While being transferred from the Ridgemont Federal Sanitarium to his old home, Smith's Grove Sanitarium, Michael learns that he has a niece and wakes up from his slumber, only to massacre the staff in the ambulance. Michael kills one of the staff by piercing his finger into his skull. The ambulance loses control and falls into a river, from where he makes his way to Haddonfield. After learning about Michael's escape, the good old Loomis gives Michael a chase and finds out that Michael has killed a mechanic and a female clerk. Michael managed to flee from the gas station where Loomis had discovered Michael's latest victims. However, Loomis doesn't give up and resumed his pursuit once again to Haddonfield. Meanwhile, we learn that Lorie's daughter Jamie is living with her foster parents Darlene and Richard, and their biological daughter Rachel. Jamie knows the legend of Michael Myers, but she is unaware of the fact that he's the man who haunts her in her nightmares. Later that night, Jamie and Rachel go out where Rachel buys a clown costume that looked eerily similar to the one Michael had worn when he murdered his sister Judith. While at a store, Michael appeared there and almost killed Jamie, but her screams alerted Rachel, and he was forced to flee. Later, Rachel escorts Jamie for trick-or-treating while Michael broke into their house and found Lorie's pictures in Jamie's room. He then killed a worker by tossing him at the transformer, effectively ensuring that the entire town got engulfed in darkness. Meanwhile, Loomis arrived at the town and alerted Sheriff Ben Meeker about Michael's presence in the town. Also, the townsfolk form a drunk and armed posse to take down Michael Myers. Loomis and Sheriff Meeker find the girls and take them to the Meeker's residence to ensure their safety and wait for reinforcement from the state police that Meeker had requested. However, Michael broke into the house and started to pile up bodies. He then threw Rachel off the roof, which knocked her unconscious. Jamie, however, managed to escape and bumped into Loomis. They try to take shelter at the local school, but Michael appears there once again and knocks down Loomis, but little Jamie once again escaped his wrath. Just as Michael was about to kill Jamie, Rachel came to the scene and subdued him with a fire extinguisher before escaping. Fortunately for the girls, the armed posse finds them and decides to take them out of town in their truck for safety. However, Michael was hiding underneath the truck, and he killed all the men, including Earl, who was driving the truck. Rachel then pushed Earl's body out of the car and drove the truck herself, with Michael hanging on top of it. She somehow managed to throw Michael out of the truck and rammed him with the truck. As the state troopers and the rest of the armed posse arrived on the spot, Jamie went up to an unconscious Michael and touched his hand, upon which he woke up. However, the armed people who had gathered there shot him left, right, and center, sending him down a mine. It's later revealed that Jamie had killed her mother in the bathroom, hence creating a psychic link between Jamie and Michael. Number 5. Halloween 5, The Revenge of Michael Myers. Halloween 5 picks up exactly where Halloween 4 left off. It is shown that Sheriff Ben Meeker, the armed posse of Haddonfield, and the state police tossed dynamite down the mine to ensure Michael's final end. But the masked serial killer is an impossible target. He escaped into a nearby creek and let the current take him away. He bumps into a local man and attempts to attack him, but falls into a coma before he could do any major damage. He stayed under the man's care for exactly a year till October 30th, 1989. Upon waking up, however, he stabs the man straight into his chest and comes back to Haddonfield to find Jamie, who is now kept at Haddonfield Children's Clinic because of murdering her mother, Darlene. The psychological trauma that Jamie experienced not only started to give her horrid nightmares and seizures, but also turned her mute. However, she has also developed a telepathic relation with her serial killer uncle, Michael Myers. When Loomis learns of Jamie's psychic link with Michael, he tries to use her to get to Michael. He further informs Sheriff Meeker that Michael is still alive. Jamie doesn't just feel what Michael does, but can also see the surroundings. The next time this happens is when Jamie sees Michael wander around her foster sister, Rachel. Loomis learns about this and calls Rachel. Although she says that she was safe, Michael was right behind her. He stabs Rachel with a pair of scissors and kills her. Not surprisingly, Jamie feels the convulsions as she experiences pain and suffering. As things proceed, Loomis becomes more hostile towards Jamie and almost forces her to give out information. He starts to believe that Jamie is probably trying to save Michael. Loomis then goes to the abandoned Myers house. Outside the house, a mysterious man in black arrived who had the same tattoo as was seen on Michael's hand at the beginning of the film. After killing Rachel, Michael goes after her friend Tina and her boyfriend Mike. He kills Mike and wears a mask that Tina had given him earlier to pose as Mike. The girl actually kissed Michael, assuming he was Mike. By now, Jamie has partially gained her ability to talk, and sensing that Tina might be in danger, she goes to warn her. But Tina is supposed to go to a Halloween party with her friends Sam and Spitz. Michael later kills both Sam and Spitz while they were about to rock each other. After finding their bodies, Tina goes to the cops but finds them dead already. Tina escapes from the spot, but Jamie and her friend Billy arrive, and in an attempt to chase Michael, he crashes his car into a tree. However, this was a minor inconvenience as Michael exited the car unscathed, not even a scratch on his body. Tina sacrifices herself to give time to Jamie and Billy to escape, who are found by Loomis. After this, Jamie finally agrees to help Loomis kill Michael for good. Back at the Myers house, Michael arrives only to meet Loomis, who tried to reason with him, but of course, it went in vain. As Michael attacked Loomis, Jamie escaped into the attic, which was transformed into a ritualistic altar of sorts. Michael arrived, and just before he was about to stab her to death, she asked to see his face. Michael obliged, and she noticed that his face was just like hers, and a tear rolled down Michael's face. However, he got further enraged by the sweet gesture and stabbed her, but Loomis came to her rescue, and in a desperate attempt to get to Michael, he used her as bait. The plan worked, and he managed to capture Michael under a net. Loomis shot Michael with several tranquilizer darts, but to ensure he was really dead, or at least unconscious, Loomis slammed Michael several times with a piece of wood. The police arrive and take an unconscious Michael into custody. He was to be later transferred into a maximum security prison, but the mysterious man in black broke him out of the local police's custody. Number 6. Halloween, The Curse of Michael Myers. The man in black abducted Michael Myers and Jamie and kept them in custody for 6 years until Jamie gave birth to a child. The man in black was the head of a druid-like cult and took away the child from Jamie, but a nurse brought the child back to Jamie and helped her escape. Jamie steals a pickup truck, but Michael pursues her. Meanwhile, we learn that the old Myers house is being resided by the Strode family, and that Loomis has become more of a recluse hermit and lives in a cabin on the outskirts of the town. His ex-colleague Terrence Wynn comes to Loomis and asks him to join the study on Myers, but Loomis refuses. They both hear a plea from Jamie on a Haddonfield radio channel, in which she warned about Michael's return. However, Michael caught up with Jamie and killed her, only to find that her child is not in the truck. Also, Tommy, the child that Lorie Strode once babysat, lives near the Strodes in a boarding house run by Mrs. Blankenship. Tommy was played by none other than Paul Rudd, or Ant-Man, in his first big screen role. As a man, Tommy had become a recluse who was obsessed with finding the truth behind Michael and his motives. He later finds Jamie's baby at a bus station and sort of adopts him, naming him Steven. When he bumps into Loomis, he tells the older man about the Strode family, who now live in the Myers house. Meanwhile, Michael arrives at Haddonfield and begins to indulge in his favorite pastime. Well, killing people. Tommy theorizes that Michael Myers, as a child, may have been inflicted with the thorn, which was an ancient druid curse. According to the curse, a child from each tribe would be chosen to bear the curse, and the child must sacrifice to next of kin. Furthermore, according to Tommy, Jamie's son Steven would be Michael's final sacrifice. It was quite the possibility that Michael fathered that child. Meanwhile, Michael goes on to kill several people. Kara Strode and her son Danny managed to meet Tommy and Loomis, but the Druid cult members arrived and abducted Kara, Danny, and Steven while they drugged Loomis and Tommy. In a strange turn of events, it is revealed that Mrs. Blankenship was a cult member, and Loomis's ex-colleague Wynn was the mysterious man in black. The cult takes Danny and Steven to an operating room. However, Tommy arrives and frees Kara, but they get pursued by Michael. But later, Michael attacked Wynn and the team of doctors who were about to perform surgery on the two boys. Kara and Tommy rescue the boys and run into a lab where Kara discovers several deformed fetuses from Wynn's prior experiments. Tommy then tricks Michael into believing that he was about to give Michael the infant child Steven, but instead injected Michael with a corrosive green fluid. Tommy, Kara, and the children leave the place, but Loomis chooses to stay to take care of some unfinished business. However, later his scream is heard, leaving his fate unknown. Number 7. Halloween H2O. 20 years later. This 1998 film largely ignored most of the sequels to the original films and picked up 20 years later in 1998 after the initial murders committed by Michael Myers. On October 29, 1998, Michael Myers burglarized Loomis's house in Langdon, Illinois, and took away the file of his adopted sister Lorie, who was presumed dead in a car accident, but not before slaying Loomis's former colleague Marion Chambers, and a few kids, including baby Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Meanwhile, in Summer Glen, California, Lorie lives as Carrie Tate, serving as the headmistress of Hillcrest Academy. Also, she is in a relationship with the boarding school's guidance counselor named Will Brennan. Despite changing her identity to save herself from Michael's wrath, she lives in dread and fear. As would be expected, Michael steals a car and heads to confront Lorie. Later that night, Lorie reveals to Will who she truly was and her relationship with the infamous Michael Myers.
Michael Myers. It's like
Michael soon arrives at the boarding school, and he and Lorie face each other for the first time in 20 years, although from across a door. Michael resumes his typical murderous spree. Lorie realizes that Michael would never stop coming after her till the time he's dead, and decides to end the menace once and for all. She now gathers the courage to face him herself. She brutally stabs him several times with a knife. He presumably dies, and Lorie is stopped by the security guard Ronnie from stabbing him further. Meanwhile, the authorities arrive at the scene and put Michael into a coroner's van, but Lorie is well aware that Michael is far from dead. So, she steals the van and drives him away. Michael later awakens and attacks Lorie, but she hits the brakes to make him fly out of the windshield. She then attempts to ram him with the car, but drives off the road and down a steep hill. Lorie manages to get out of the car, but Michael gets pinned between a tree and the car. In a tender moment of brother-sisterly love, Michael reaches out to Lorie, who initially seemed to be moved by the gesture, but ultimately, she decapitates him with an axe. Number 8. Halloween Resurrection. In Resurrection, it is revealed that Michael attacked a paramedic who had come to take him to the ambulance. Michael damaged the paramedic's larynx so that he couldn't speak. After this, he exchanged clothes with the injured paramedic and fled. Naturally, Lorie had killed an innocent man instead of her brother and was charged with murder. She was then sent to a psychiatric facility where she spent many days living with trauma and guilt. Michael appeared 3 years later in 2001 on Halloween and tried to kill Lorie, who had been kept at Grace Anderson's sanitarium. Since Lorie was already prepared for Michael's arrival, she had set up traps for him. Although Michael killed 2 security guards, the traps that Lorie had set up worked and temporarily incapacitated Michael. However, Lorie didn't want to kill another innocent person, so in order to be sure that it was Michael, she tried to remove his mask. But this was a grave mistake because Michael stabbed her and threw her off the terrace. A year later, a few college students participate in a reality show named Dangertainment, in which they were supposed to spend a night at the Myers house and determine what made Michael commit the murders that he did. Unbeknownst to them, Michael had already arrived at Haddonfield and killed the cameraman named Charlie. Later, he kills one of the contestants named Bill. Donna and Jim realized that the show was a setup to stage murders and earn money. The contestants would be paid, but the Myers house was going to become ground zero of a massive massacre because Michael would leave no stone unturned to ensure that no one remains alive. Soon, they realized that despite the show being initially staged, the murders being committed were real. Michael continues to kill several of the contestants. After much ado and a lot of effort, Michael presumably dies in a burning garage, but as the coroner prepared to examine his body, Michael is revived once again. Number 9. Halloween, 2007. Rob Zombie's 2007 film Halloween completely reimagined John Carpenter's horror classic. He tried to make the film serve as both a remake and an origin story for Michael Myers. 10-year-old Michael Myers had already shown psychotic tendencies, but things went out of hand on Halloween night when he murdered a school bully, his sister Judith, and 2 others, sparing only his infant sister Lorie. After a long trial, Michael is found guilty and is moved to Smith's Grove Sanitarium, where he is given under the care of Dr. Samuel Loomis. Over a period of 1 year, Michael goes from a cooperative child to a disassociative one and ultimately kills a nurse. His mother, Deborah, fails to bear this violent behavior of her son and commits suicide. After her mother's suicide, Lorie was adopted by the Strodes. He starts making masks and remains like a recluse in the sanitarium for the next 15 years until he escapes from there, killing the security and staff on his way out. He then kills a trucker to get his clothes and return to his now abandoned house, where he retrieves his knife and mask from the night that he had killed his elder sister. Michael resumes his killing spree in Haddonfield and manages to abduct Lorie. He takes her to their old home where he tries to tell her that she was his sister by showing her a picture of himself with his mother and Lorie. However, Lorie doesn't understand this and stabs him before fleeing. Michael chases her, but Loomis arrives just in time to shoot Michael thrice. But he recovers and captures Lorie once more. In the ensuing struggle, they both fall down the railing and land on the ground. Lorie wakes up on Michael, who is unconscious, and Lorie fires the gun with Michael holding her hand. Number 10. Halloween 2, 2009. After presumably killing her brother, Lorie is found by Sheriff Brackett and is taken to the hospital. Later, Annie Brackett and Loomis are also found injured and taken to the hospital. On the other hand, the ambulance in which Michael was being transported meets with an accident, and Michael escapes, killing a paramedic in the process. 2 years later, Lorie starts living with the Bracketts, but is haunted by the ghosts of Halloween past. Lorie deals with her trauma. Loomis writes a book about the sequence of events, but Michael, who has been wrongfully presumed dead, is constantly haunted by his mother's ghosts and visions of his younger self, both of whom ask him to reunite with his sister.
I found her. I found Boo.
Naturally, he heads back to Haddonfield. Later, Lorie learns from Loomis's book that she really was Michael's sister, Angel Myers. To escape the sense of trauma and paranoia, she goes to a Halloween party with her friends Harley and Maya. Michael kills Harley and goes on to fatally wound Annie, who later dies in Lorie's arms. Michael then kills Maya and abducts Lorie to take her to an abandoned shed. Once Lorie wakes up from her unconsciousness, she sees the ghost of her mother. However, Brackett and other cops surround the house. When Loomis goes inside to reason with Michael, he gets stabbed and killed. But Brackett shoots Michael down. Later, Lorie wakes up from her hallucinations and stabs Michael with his own knife and comes out of the shed donning his mask. Naturally, she has become what Michael used to be and is ultimately put into a psychiatric asylum. Number 11. Halloween, 2018. The film is a direct sequel to the original and also retcons the previous sequels. 40 years after Michael committed his first murder, he was transferred from Smith's Grove to a maximum security prison. However, on the day of his transfer, Michael crashes the bus in which he was being transported and stole a car after killing a father-son duo and headed to Haddonfield. The story is closely followed by 2 true crime podcasters named Dana Haynes and Aaron Corey. They also visited him at the hospital and showed him the mask he had worn to commit his first murder, but it seemed to have no effect on him. In her hometown, Lorie Strode still lived in Michael's fear. She drank heavily for these 40 years, which was why her daughter Karen was taken away from her by the state when Karen was 12.
I learned how to shoot a gun when I was 8.
However, she was in touch with her granddaughter Allison. On the morning of Halloween, Michael stalked Dana and Aaron as they visited the grave of his sister Judith. He then followed the 2 of them to a gas station and murdered them, along with a mechanic for his coveralls. He then retrieved his old mask from Aaron's car. As the news of Michael's escape spread, Deputy Frank Hawkins, the one who first arrested Michael, urged the current Sheriff Barker to pay heed to the danger that Michael poses to the town. Meanwhile, Lorie freaks out because of the development and warns Karen against Michael, but Karen doesn't seem to take the threat seriously. Later that night, Allison found her boyfriend cheating on her and was left heartbroken. She left with his friend Oscar instead. As Michael wreaked his havoc on the town of Haddonfield, Lorie came to rescue Allison and faced Michael for the first time since the events of the first film. In this film, Michael gets an ally in the form of Dr. Ranbir Sartain, who attacked Hawkins as he was about to kill Michael. Furthermore, it was Ranbir who orchestrated Michael's escape so that he could study him while in the act. But, as fate would have it, Michael killed Ranbir himself. Meanwhile, Lorie goes to her house with Karen to meet Allison, but Michael arrives there. Michael kills Lorie's son-in-law, but Lorie was quick enough to get Karen to safety before taking on Michael herself. In the end, Lorie, Allison, and Karen managed to trap Michael in the house before setting it ablaze. They presumed that he died, but unfortunately for them, they didn't see the post-credits scene in which Michael's breathing was heard, indicating that he survived. Future of the franchise. The new 2021 film Halloween Kills by director David Gordon Green, which is slated for release this October, will serve as a direct sequel to the 2018 film Halloween, in which Michael Myers was left to die in a burning basement. The trailer revealed that firefighters unwittingly freed Myers from his death trap. While Jamie Lee Curtis would reprise her role as Lorie Strode, James Jude Courtney would star as the knife-wielding serial killer. Furthermore, Nick Castle, who played Myers in John Carpenter's original, would also have a cameo in the upcoming movie. This time around, Michael Myers would be driven by sheer revenge and wouldn't take out unsuspecting victims, but would rather be more calculating yet enraged.
But a man couldn't have survived that fire.
After Halloween Kills, we will hopefully get to enjoy Michael Myers one last time in Halloween Ends, which is supposed to be the last film of the franchise, and would put an end to Michael Myers' wrath and Lorie Strode's trauma. Executive producer John Carpenter and the rest of the team have promised a thrill ride for this one, and it is rumored that Halloween Kills will have the highest kill count of the franchise. Will the Strode woman and the vigilante mob manage to stop this killing express that's Michael Myers? We'll find out soon when the film premieres on September 8th, 2021 at the Venice International Film Festival. Its worldwide release, however, is slated for October 15th, 2021.
And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks everyone.